Giorgio Petrosyan is a living legend, having won over 100 fights in Muay Thai and kickboxing, with only 2 losses. He's also taken several prestigious championships, tournaments, and titles. His 42-fight winning streak from 2007 to 2013 is a testament to the kind of fighter he is. A fighter able to thrive no matter the style or skill of his competitor. There are some fighters who charge forward, looking to pressure you into making a mistake. There are some that like to retreat, trying to catch you chasing them. There are some who seek to smother, staying close to remain safe while opening up new lines of attack. Some like to circle at long range, using superior angles to pick you apart. And then there's Petrosyan, a fighter who plants himself right in front of you and dares you to prove that you're better than him. Petrosyan can get away with maintaining this dangerous range because he has an incredible sense of distance and timing. By fighting just on the edge of his opponent's reach, Petrosyan can make subtle adjustments, moving just a few inches to disrupt a competitor's intentions. This means he can seamlessly blend his offense and defense, expertly setting up powerful attacks or counters. For instance, in this clip, Petrosyan moves offline in the same direction as his opponent's rear leg roundhouse kick, and jabs at the same time. This dispels the force of his opponent's kick, catching him at an angle that disrupts his balance. But this is just one small, simplistic example. In this video, we'll explore how Petrosyan uses complex distance and timing tricks as the basis of his entire style, beginning with the most basic fundamentals, and then examining his more advanced techniques. To stay at his preferred distance and remain conscious, Petrosyan must be able to respond to any threat in a millisecond. And a big reason he's able to do that is that he fights from a short, narrow stance. Like Samart, Petrosyan keeps his feet fairly close together, even for kickboxing. This helps increase his mobility and allows him to quickly check kicks. What's more, Petrosyan fights from a southpaw stance, meaning that he and his opponent usually have opposite feet forward in an open position. This combination of staying close with a short stance in an open position allows Petrosyan to check nearly any kick with his lead leg alone. Lead leg roundhouses, rear leg roundhouses, front teeps, or rear teeps can all be blocked with the same motion. And because Petrosyan stays so close, he doesn't necessarily have to worry about turning his shin the correct way to take the impact. He can instead jam an opponent's kick, cutting it off early to smother it. All this assists Petrosyan in using the old Muay Thai trick of tapping his lead foot as he marches in, to both threaten kicks and remain defensively responsible. This is similar to how a boxer can use bob and weaving to both stay safe and threaten loaded up punches. It is more difficult to land a lead teep to the midsection in an open stance, especially if the opponent keeps a more sideways stance himself. A much easier and highly underutilized technique is to teep the leg, as Petrosyan likes to do. However, the real benefit of Petrosyan Thai marching into exchanges is that it helps to set up his jab. Petrosyan's teep feint actually loads up his jab with more power as he falls or hops into the punch, similar to Dempsey's drop step. These lead side tactics allow Petrosyan complete control of distance. He can use them to both keep his opponents from moving in to smother him at close range, or he can aggressively chase them if they try to move away to long range. Once he establishes his ideal range, the doctor can operate with impunity. Petrosyan is not just one step away from landing a jab or teep. He's one step away from landing a power shot, meaning he's in range to explode into fight-ending attacks when his opponents least expect them. But there is one problem. Petrosyan's shorter stance does limit his potential to put power into his kicks and punches. Really hard shots require a wider stance, because a wider stance can transfer more weight from foot to foot. To get around this, Petrosyan uses split steps to smoothly transition into a wider stance, similar to Ricardo Lopez. But unlike Lopez, Petrosyan angles his split step to place his lead foot on the outside of his opponent's, taking the open stance dominant angle. This perfectly aligns his lead hooks and rear side attacks. But more importantly, it allows Petrosyan to turn his foot out at the same time, drastically shortening the time it takes him to throw a roundhouse kick. This is similar to how Decker stepped out to initiate his roundhouse kicks rather than pivot, but even more streamlined. Adding on to this, Petrosyan will also shuffle off of his split step to throw gazelle punches, moving off angle to connect with lead hooks or uppercuts. While boxers would follow this up with a rear hook to capitalize on the superior outside position, Petrosyan has more powerful weapons at his disposal, mainly rear knees and rear leg roundhouse kicks. In this clip, Petrosyan checks a kick with his rear knee, and then split steps off of his check to land a cross. He next shuffles offline to land a gazelle hook, and uses the dominant angle to throw a rear leg roundhouse kick. While Petrosyan's offense is certainly formidable, his malleable style means that he doesn't actually need to lead. Oddly enough, head movement is a big part of Petrosyan's success when it comes to landing counters. Head movement is dangerous in kickboxing, as you position your head closer for a kick or knee. But Petrosyan uses his head movement judiciously, only ducking when his opponent has already committed too much weight to a punch to throw a kick. This allows Petrosyan to throw punches from angles seen far more often in boxing. For example, here Petrosyan combines head movement with a cross parry, deflecting his opponent's rear hand to throw him off balance, and using the new angle afforded him through head movement to connect with a body shot. Pulling is one piece of head movement that is fairly safe in kickboxing, and Petrosyan uses it to full advantage. Like Manny Pacquiao, Petrosyan is a big fan of pulling away from his opponent's jab to return a lead hook over their shoulder. Petrosyan's ridiculous reflexes means that he can also land a good deal of intercepting counters. Like Arts, he's a fan of running an opponent into knees if they come in too aggressively. But whether he's initiating or countering, the true beauty of Petrosyan's style comes from the way he uses guard manipulation to create superior angles and set up new lines of attack. Lead hand fighting is essential in an open stance. Because the fighter's shoulders tend to get in each other's way, it's more difficult to land jabs. So instead, many fighters prefer to use their lead hand to set up their other weapons. Luckily, Petrosyan is a virtuoso with his lead hand. As with his lead leg, he can use it to defend most any strike. He does this by smothering, framing, and cross-parrying. See here how Petrosyan turns his block into a cross-parry to defend attacks from both sides. And here, Petrosyan controls his opponent's posture to defend against his attacks, evading each strike with his lead arm alone. But Petrosyan can use his guard manipulation tactics for far more than defense. By constantly jabbing and probing with his lead hand, Petrosyan looks to draw attacks, which he can in turn use his already extended lead arm to defend and counter. By forcibly manipulating his opponent's guard to control their balance and distance, Petrosyan can stifle their defense while creating new lines of attack for himself. Here Petrosyan split steps into a cross, and then steps outside to hook. His opponent ducks, so Petrosyan frames off his hook to keep him stationary, maintaining contact as he steps back inside. He next throws a cross, but it was just a decoy. This time, his hook breaks through his opponent's guard, and Petrosyan turns it into a leverage block to stop his opponent's return fire. Petrosyan actually gains tempo by turning his strikes into frames, rather than retract them. He controls his opponent's posture by pushing against their shoulders and head. This delays his opponent's ability to strike by forcing them to reset their weight first, giving Petrosyan all the time he needs to set up an even harder shot. Here Petrosyan tie hops into a double jab, then uses his extended arm to pull down his opponent's guard, stepping outside. He lands a hard rear hand, blocks his opponent's vision by smothering his guard, then pulls him into a hard knee. He turns his collar tie into a frame, throws a cross that misses, and then uses his extended rear arm to pull his opponent into yet another knee. Notice that every technique sets up the next technique, whether Petrosyan lands or not. Destroying his opponent's balance this way affords Petrosyan the time needed to use angled footwork. While his opponent resets his weight or repositions himself, Petrosyan takes a superior angle. It's no coincidence that Arts and Petrosyan are both contenders for greatest of all time, and both utilize angled footwork with guard manipulation and balance disruption. In this clip, Petrosyan frames off his jab, pinning his opponent's lead arm and blocking his vision. He then shuffles outside to land a roundhouse kick to the back of his opponent's leg. This is similar to the Matrix shuffle Lomachenko uses today. Combined with his explosive footwork, Petrosyan's guard disruption and balance manipulation tend to simply overwhelm competitors. For instance, here Petrosyan uses his extended jab to catch an opponent's teeth, throwing him off balance to lead him into a rear hook. He next turns that hook into a frame as he moves off angle, using it to pull his opponent into a knee and landing a terrific knockdown. Petrosyan's simplified checking to keep distance, multi-purpose lead hand, angled footwork, guard manipulation, and balance disruption through long guard tactics all serve to make him one of the most dominant fighters ever. He's still active now, and I invite everyone to tune into his upcoming bouts to watch a true master at work. If you want to up your own skills, you can check out my books on footwork, power, and defense, all linked below. Be sure to catch my combat sports podcast with Roy Foreman, The Punch You Didn't See. From the Modern Martial Artist, this has been David Christian, wishing you happy training.